Imagine a moment when the world looks completely normal. People wake up, go to work, argue over small things, chase success, scroll through endless screens. Everything seems steady, familiar, predictable. But beneath that surface, something invisible is shifting. The world is standing on the edge of an event it doesn't even recognize. That's how the tribulation begins, not with chaos but with calm. Before the noise comes the silence. Before the shaking comes the illusion that everything is under control. For centuries, people have speculated about these 7 years, some imagining monsters and fire, others dismissing it as symbolic or exaggerated. But what if the truth isn't theatrical at all? What if it's slower, more psychological, more terrifying because it unfolds in plain sight? The beginning won't look like an apocalypse. It'll look like progress. The world will crave unity, stability, and peace. After years of division, crises, and confusion, people will be tired. They'll want someone, anyone, who can bring order to the chaos. And that's where the first great shift happens. A leader rises, not necessarily with threats or armies at first, but with words. With promises that sound reasonable, compassionate, even holy. He'll speak to what people fear most, instability, and offer what they crave most, safety. And little by little, the world will follow. Not because of force, but because of fatigue. Because after so much uncertainty, control will feel like hope. The first years of this period won't look like war or destruction. They'll feel like resolution. Treaties will be signed. Economies will recover. People will talk about a new era of peace, a rebirth of humanity. And for a while, it'll seem like maybe, just maybe, we've learned something from our mistakes. But peace built on illusion never lasts, because beneath that surface, something darker will begin to pulse. Systems of power will start tightening. Freedom will begin to shrink, subtly, silently, disguised as protection. What starts as harmony will quietly turn into control. And soon the line between leadership and domination will blur. It's in that fragile calm that the real tribulation begins. It's not just about events, it's about revelation, masks falling, truths exposed. It's the moment when humanity realizes it traded truth for comfort, and comfort for control. Those first steps will seem harmless, even hopeful, but they'll set the stage for everything that follows. The unraveling of the world as we know it, and the unveiling of what's been waiting just beneath the surface all along. For a while, it'll look like humanity finally figured things out. No wars breaking headlines, no financial collapse, no chaos flooding the streets. The world will start speaking a new language. One built on tolerance, unity, progress. Everywhere you look, there will be a sense of relief. People will say, "We made it. We survived the chaos." And maybe for a short time it'll even feel true. But what people won't realize is that this peace isn't growing from truth. It's being manufactured. Controlled, carefully managed by someone who understands what humanity is desperate for: belonging, direction, purpose. This is the moment when charisma replaces character. The new global leader won't need to shout or threaten. He'll smile. He'll heal divides with words, not weapons. He'll position himself as the only one capable of keeping the peace intact. And people, exhausted from years of uncertainty, will cling to him. But peace that depends on a person instead of principle is fragile. And soon, that peace will demand a price. At first, the compromises will seem small. Little adjustments here and there, in politics, religion, commerce, systems merging for the greater good. Words like unification and global harmony will flood speeches, songs, even school books. And it will sound so right, so needed, that very few will notice what's quietly being erased in the background. Individuality, conviction, freedom to question. It's the kind of deception that doesn't need force, just comfort. People will trade their autonomy for a sense of belonging. And those who resist, who still question, will be labeled as obstacles to progress. Troublemakers. The world won't burn them, it'll simply silence them. Because when peace becomes an idol, truth becomes the enemy. Underneath all the order, something spiritual will begin to shift. What was once called sacred will be redefined. Old beliefs will be softened, merged, reinterpreted to fit the new system. A single voice will rise to represent them all, and the world will celebrate it as a breakthrough. A unification of faiths, a healing of division. But behind that unity lies a substitution. The devotion that once belonged to the unseen will be redirected to something visible, to power, to control. And yet, the world will cheer. Because false peace always feels genuine, until it costs you your soul. That's the cruel beauty of deception. It doesn't destroy through chaos, it seduces through calm. By the time people realize what's happening, the foundation of freedom will already be gone. The systems built to protect them will have become the very chains that bind them. And then, slowly, the cracks will start to show. Markets will tremble, borders will blur, natural disasters will intensify. The fragile balance that once seemed unshakable will begin to crumble from the inside. And the leader who promised safety will reveal what safety really meant. Submission. The false peace will collapse, not with an explosion but with a whisper. And when it does, the world will find itself staring into the face of what it truly unleashed. It won't happen in a single day. Deception never unravels that cleanly. It'll start with whispers. Odd disappearances, silent detentions, new rules that appear overnight. The same world that once celebrated freedom will now quietly monitor it. Screens will glow brighter, but the truth will grow dimmer. And the man who once smiled from every broadcast will begin to speak differently. Not louder, just heavier. His words will carry weight that wasn't there before, a kind of authority that doesn't invite agreement but demands it. The illusion of choice will still exist, but only for those who choose correctly. The first signs of control will come disguised as protection. Mandatory systems to keep people safe. Digital verification to prevent chaos. A global economy that requires one simple mark of participation. An idea that sounds efficient, modern, even compassionate. But behind that logic lies a quiet elimination of independence. No mark, no access. No access, no survival. And for the first time, people will begin to see the cost of peace. Those who refuse to conform will be cut off, not just economically but socially. They'll become invisible. The same neighbors who once smiled at them will now avoid them, not out of hate but out of fear. Because standing near truth in a world built on lies becomes dangerous. The air will grow heavier, the silence louder. And for those who still hold on to faith, it will feel like standing in the middle of a collapsing civilization with only a candle in their hand. They'll be hunted, blamed for disruption, accused of dividing the world. But in reality, they'll be the last ones holding on to something real. Then the mask will fully come off. The leader who promised unity will reveal what kind of unity he truly meant. Not harmony but submission. Religion will no longer be plural. It will become singular, centered on him. Statues will rise, symbols will spread, and those who bow will be rewarded with privilege and protection. Those who don't will vanish. Every screen, every street, every institution will become a mirror reflecting one image. His. The world will look perfect on the surface. Efficient, safe, organized. But beneath it, the soul of humanity will be breaking. Children will grow up never knowing what truth looked like. Generations will forget there was ever another way to live. And while people debate, resist, or surrender, something greater will begin to stir. Not human, not political, but cosmic. Because power like that never goes unchecked forever. The breaking point won't just be political. It will be spiritual. Nature will rebel. The sky will change. The earth will start to groan under the weight of corruption. Disasters will multiply, and no science or system will be able to stop it. The very world that trusted in its own brilliance will find itself trembling before forces it can't control. And as chaos spreads, a single truth will become painfully clear. The peace that was promised never existed. It was just a pause, a calm before the storm. When the mask comes off, people will finally understand what they invited in when they traded truth for comfort. And by then, escape will no longer be an option, only endurance. It begins quietly, as all great unravelings do. A trembling in the ground that no one can explain. The sky turning strange shades that no filter can capture. Oceans rising where they shouldn't, rain falling where it never did. Nature itself seems to have lost its rhythm, but this isn't random. The balance that held the world together has been disturbed, and it's reacting like a wounded creation. Cities that once stood as monuments to progress will begin to fracture. Towers will fall, systems will fail, and economies that once looked unshakable will crumble overnight. People will run to governments, to science, to anything that promises control, but nothing will hold. Because what's breaking isn't just infrastructure, it's illusion. The same world that worshipped itself will now see what happens when it becomes its own god. Technology will still flash, satellites will still orbit, but all that brilliance will mean nothing when the air itself feels like it's fighting back. The sky will darken, not from pollution but from power. Something bigger than humanity will move through the atmosphere, unseen but undeniable. And as the physical world convulses, the spiritual world will open. For centuries, people have sensed there's more beyond what we see, something vast, watching, waiting. Now that veil will lift. The invisible will become visible, and fear will no longer be abstract. darkness will manifest, not as superstition but as reality. Beings once dismissed as myth will walk the earth again. The fallen, the deceivers, the ancient powers that once whispered from shadows will step into daylight. And the world, already weakened by chaos, will have no strength left to resist. The leader, now fully revealed, won't hide from this storm. He'll use it. He'll call it destiny. He'll promise that through loyalty, safety can still be found. He'll present himself not just as ruler, but as savior, the only bridge between destruction and survival. And millions will believe him. They'll follow because fear has a way of blinding even the wise. But there will still be resistance. Small, scattered groups of people who refuse to kneel. They won't have power or influence, just conviction, a kind of courage that can't be manufactured. They'll hide, move, whisper, pray, and remind one another that this isn't the end, yet. They'll know that what's collapsing isn't permanent, it's a purging, that the shaking of heaven and earth isn't just destruction, it's exposure. The masks are gone, the systems are falling, and what's real is finally being revealed. For 7 years, time itself will feel distorted, each day heavier than the one before. Each breath a reminder of how fragile existence has become. Plagues will spread, resources will vanish, light will fade, and yet, within that darkness, something sacred will still flicker. Hope won't disappear, it'll just change form. It'll look less like comfort and more like endurance, less like certainty and more like faith that refuses to die, even when everything else does. And that, perhaps, will be the greatest miracle of all, that even as the earth shakes and the heavens rage, something within humanity still whispers, this is not the end. At this point, the world will no longer look familiar. Borders won't matter. Governments won't matter. The fight will no longer be about nations or ideologies, it'll be about allegiance. The invisible war that once played out in hearts and choices will now take physical form. Every human being will stand at a crossroads, surrender or resist. The man who once ruled through charm and politics will now rule through fear and worship. His image will be everywhere, projected on screens, carved into stone, echoed in the language people use. It won't be just leadership, it will be devotion. And for the first time in human history, the world will experience global worship directed at something other than God. It will feel electric, intoxicating, terrifying, because it will be powered by forces not of this world. Everywhere, people will speak of miracles, signs in the sky, fire that seems to fall on command, voices that echo from nowhere. It'll feel supernatural because it is, but it won't come from light. The same fallen powers that once rebelled will now move openly, feeding deception, performing wonders designed to erase doubt and secure loyalty. They won't look monstrous, they'll look glorious. That's the deception. Evil won't arrive dressed in darkness, but disguised as brilliance. And yet, not everyone will bow. A scattered remnant will still resist, clinging to truth even when it costs them everything. They won't have armies or weapons, only faith. But that will be enough to unsettle the darkness, because what evil can never fully understand is how people still choose to believe when belief comes with pain. These will be the days when silence will speak louder than speeches, when a whispered prayer in a cave will carry more power than 1,000,000 public declarations of loyalty. The war will be fought in two realms, the physical and the spiritual. In one, chaos will reign, famine, violence, betrayal. In the other, unseen battles will rage for every human soul. And even though the world will appear to belong to the darkness, heaven will still be at work, not loudly but precisely. Some will find themselves protected in impossible ways. Others will fall, but not in defeat, in victory that the world won't understand. Because in this war, winning won't look like survival. It will look like faithfulness. As the days grow darker, hope will begin to take a new shape. It won't come from the sky yet, but from within. A deep awareness that everything happening is building towards something final, something irreversible. The world won't last much longer under this rule. The throne of deception will begin to shake as creation itself starts rejecting the darkness sitting upon it. And when the ruler of this broken age gathers all power to himself, declaring absolute dominion, something ancient will stir in response, not from below but from above. Because the moment darkness believes it has won, light is already preparing to return. The war for souls will reach its final moment, not in the noise of battle, but in the silence before the sky splits open. The end won't begin with noise, it will begin with stillness, a strange, impossible quiet that spreads across the chaos. The wars will pause, the winds will stop, Even the sky will seem to hold its breath, because creation itself will sense what's coming. For years, the world has been ruled by a lie. A throne built on fear, worship fueled by deception. Everything that once seemed powerful will look small. The false king will stand in his fortress surrounded by armies and technology, but none of it will matter. Because the light that's about to appear won't be another force. It will be the return of authority itself. It will happen suddenly. The horizon will burn brighter than any sunrise. The air will tremble with something that feels like both terror and relief. And the same world that once mocked the idea of a divine return will now watch it unfold with its own eyes. Not as myth, not as hope, as reality. For those who followed the darkness, the light will feel like judgment, exposure that no one can hide from. For those who endured, who refused to bow, it will feel like the first breath after drowning. The battle will not be long. It won't be fought through strategy or human power. The false throne will fall the moment truth arrives. Because lies don't die through conflict, they vanish when the truth walks in. And when it's over, silence will fall again. Not the silence of fear, but the silence of peace, the kind the world has never known. The earth, scarred and broken, will begin to heal. The air will clear. The rivers will run again. It won't happen overnight. Restoration never does. But this time it will be real. Those who survived will look around and realize what they just witnessed wasn't the end of the world. It was the end of deception. The true beginning will start here, in a world humbled by truth and redeemed through justice. And maybe that's the point of the entire story. The tribulation isn't just about punishment or wrath. It's about exposure. It strips away everything false so that what's real can finally breathe again. For generations, humanity built its kingdoms, its ideologies, its religions, all trying to reach peace on its own terms. And when every one of those systems failed, the truth didn't come from the ground up, but from the sky down. The return isn't just an event, it's a reset. A reminder that no matter how far the world falls, it can never outrun redemption. When the king returns, every wound will have meaning. Every tear will tell a story. And the world, once trapped in 7 years of darkness, will finally see what it looks like when light reigns again. Not borrowed, not temporary, but eternal.